Hi family. So here we are with the Miami adventure video. I'm making this video because there were some folks that were contemplating travel and they'd like to see if flights are on time and how crazy it is at the airports, and so I thought that might be helpful. Um, Also because I wanted to share the experience through my perspective. If my perspective and yours are similar, then maybe you'll get a little encouragement out of this. And if our perspectives don't, if they're not sort of in alignment with one another, then maybe this will be the encouragement for you to consider a different perspective on the situation. So it's my honor if any of this is helpful to share it with you. So without further ado, in the Mexico airport, there are about 75% of the people wearing face masks and even these like plastic visors that covered even the face masks. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then just as I was going through security, there was this little station where they had this QR code for you to scan with your phone. And it was basically a questionnaire asking your name, your flight number, and which seat you are on the airplane. So clearly this was a tracking device, because if, let's say, somebody in the seat next to me contracted the coronavirus, and if they were symptomatic, which most of us are not, but let's just say if they were, and if those symptoms were enough to, along with their fear porn, that whatever level of fear porn they were digesting about this virus game, maybe they went to the hospital or to the doctor, and so they, took it to another level, and then now they give them a test, which is historically, it's not, well, that's another video, it's not really a test, but it's suffice to say it's a way to implant nanobots and collect antibodies. But the tests lead these, more than half of the time, they lead false positives. And so let's say that person, was symptomatic, and they did go to the doctor, and they did get one of these tests, and the test came back as, say, positive, right? So then what does that mean? That everybody on the airplane within a certain, 6 feet or 2 meters distance from this person has to be tracked down, and perhaps quarantined or forcibly vaccinated. So no way was I going to do this. No way. So I tried to go through security, and the lady said, "Oh, you need to fill out this questionnaire." And I told her, "Well, I don't have a smartphone to download that QR code, so I'll be happy to fill out your questionnaire if it's on paper." And sure enough, she produced a paper copy. So I filled it out, and she basically said, if anybody asks you for this, you have to give it to them. So for me, that means lose the piece of paper, because I'm not giving this to anybody. So I said, okay, yeah. So I went through the security, and I got on the plane. And then the next thing that I found really bizarre was the flight attendant was just really out of sorts. She was visibly shaken and extremely nervous, and the pupils of her eyes were really contracted, and her skin was rather pale, and she was kind of sweaty, like clammy, kind of, somebody who's in fear and panic, and somebody who's oxygen deprived because they're wearing a mask all the time and it's not operating with their cognitive abilities or their bodily functions or their faculties. And she approached me and she said, you have to wear a face mask. And I said, no, I don't want to. And she said, well, you have to. And I said, well, who says? And she said, American Airlines, it's their policy. And I said, well, let me explain something to you. And I, very politely, very calmly, with love, without emotion, getting, hysterical about it, just really calmly, I explained to her that American has adopted these policies based on guidelines and recommendations, not laws, but guidelines and recommendations of organizations called the CDC and the WHO. And 90% of their operating budgets come from private investors who have um, vested interest in seeing the pharmaceutical um, stock market gains. And I mentioned to her that so as long as American Airlines develops policies based on this sort of thing, then with this not coming from medical experts, this is coming from people like Bill Gates who have billions of dollars invested in this Corona project. I said I'm not going to comply with that, and she basically sort of digested the information a little bit, but she was still very much out of sorts, and that's okay. At least I had a chance to try to help her and change her perspective, maybe, because if she's in charge of this airplane, if there's an emergency landing or something, like some emergency situation arises, we the passengers we depend on her to be within her full operating potential, to have her capacities fully about her, and that certainly was not the case. So not only is her health being compromised by wearing the face mask, but also the rest of the passengers are being put into danger, and there's legal liability for this. There's moral liability, most importantly, but when you're talking about corporations, for them it usually comes down to the bottom line, which means dollars and cents, and so that's what he thinks about the money system. I don't know if you could hear the gecko or not, but anyhow, so I just want to put that out there, family, that we would do well to take notes as things like this are being forced upon us, so that when the day of reckoning comes, that we will have a fully documented, whether that's a film like I'm doing now, or notes or whatever. Even send letters to the corporation, let them know that you don't participate in this and you don't accept this. Basically, she didn't push it any further, so I didn't put the mask on. Now, and by the way, I didn't put a mask on for the entire journey, going there, going back, nothing. When I got to the Miami airport, I noticed a very, very dense energy. It was worse actually than the 5G. It felt more like 6G. And about 95% of the people in the airport were wearing, more than 95% actually, I would say like 99% of the people were wearing their face masks, and there was no eye contact, it was completely dehumanized there. It was so dense and dark. It was, par for the course, really. I noticed everybody had on all their personal protective gear, their face masks and their visors and their rubber gloves and their, everything, and, taking people's passports, and, but not to worry if there's a virus on your passport, we're just going to collect that on our rubber gloves and then give you your passport back, and touch somebody else's passport that didn't have the coronavirus and give you, not that coronaviruses can be passed that way, but that's the predominant thought. And so you see how this just gets more ridiculous. When you give up your corona chakra and you don't think for yourself, right? It's just a stage, and it's just getting more and more ridiculous. The airport was also deserted, so I had to wonder about all the people who traveled to Miami for tourism or business that are being harmed by this unlawful shutdown. And then the last thing I noticed in the airport was they had the air conditioner turned down to what? God, it felt like it was like 52 degrees Fahrenheit or about like 12 degrees Celsius. So for me, this is like 70 or 72 for me is a really cold air conditioner. This was turned down 20 degrees, less than that. And I asked one of the staff in the airport why the temperature was so cold, and she said they had the air conditioners turned all the way down, as low as they would go. She said because it was for the prevention of the spread of the coronavirus. Okay, I'm going to include in the show notes here. I don't include every source, I mean, I could, but, I encourage everybody to go out and do their own research instead of allowing me to spoon feed it to you. It's a truth, is something we have to want, and if we want it, then we will put forth the effort to find it. But I will include in the show notes just one example, one scientific study to show that flu viruses actually, in viruses writ large, proliferate in colder environments. And this is why, it's the wintertime when we have the flu season. So I found that pretty interesting. And then I went outside the airport and I called the Uber driver, and he showed up with a face mask on, and I explained to him that I can't get in the car with you unless you take your face mask off, because I need you to get oxygen to your brain. I need you to be fully functional, because if you're not, then you're putting my life in danger. And he flipped. Like, I could literally see this guy's brain exploding. He was very pale, again, the pupils were very pinpointed. They weren't dilated to a normal shape to allow light in. They were just very, very, very pinpointed. And he was visibly sweating as well, and shaking. And he said, well, not only can, you not ride without a mask, but I can't take mine off either. And I said, well, who says that? And he says, it's Uber policy. And I said, well, where does Uber get its policy from? And boom, he just shut down. He couldn't go any further. There was no sense in explaining to him like I explained to the airline agent. He just was not receptive at all to any information. And that's cool, so I asked him to show me why this policy, or why I should adhere to this policy. So he grabbed his phone, and he's got a special app for the Uber on his phone because he's a driver. My app is for the rider. And he showed me, see, look here, if I cancel the ride, then I have to select a reason. And one of the reasons is you're not wearing a face mask. And I said, okay, buddy, again, this is tracking and tracing because, Uber has your phone number, they have your credit card, they have your name, all your personal information on your profile of Uber. And so if they can say that you're not obeying or complying with the agenda, then looky here, we can deny you service, right? And we can track you and trace you on top of that because we can pinpoint your phone using, where you're at on the grid. Whew, crazy, right? So I just said, listen, don't select that as the reason. Choose some other reason. And with that, I bid him farewell, and I called another Uber driver. And I come to find out later that night that he did say that I wasn't wearing a mask. So I got an email from a no reply email at Uber telling me that, I had to wear a face mask. Of course, I couldn't reply to the email. They didn't have a website where I could submit a complaint. No phone number for me to call, just a frequently asked questions site, I don't have a question for you, Uber. I have a statement for you. Give me the information for your trusted agent because I am prepared to send a subpoena. You are endangering the public and your staff while you're at it, but hey, encouragement, family, this is the kind of thing that we really need to hit them where it counts, because these folks are interested in the bottom line, as I said. So if you have some information that would place a financial liability on them. Because there will be an accident. You can count on that. At least one in Miami. Dozens, hundreds, thousands. As people continue to wear these face masks, there will be problems. And if we have a record of warning the company in advance to, hey, you better look at this evidence to show that this is not good, then they can be shown to have ignored that evidence and ignored that feedback from their customers. But then if you just shut down all the ways for customers to give feedback, then there you go. So crazy stuff, folks. So I called the next Uber driver, and this guy, I wrote a text message to say, if you're going to wear a face mask, don't bother stopping, because my health, I won't wear a face mask either, because it's dangerous for my health, and I don't want you wearing one because it's dangerous for the safety of the operation of the vehicle. So Mario shows up, and he just said, oh my God, thank you, sister. I'm so glad to have you as a passenger. You're like the first person I've come across in months that has any common sense. And, so obviously Mario and I got on really well. So we took a ride to the store. It was quite a long ride. It was a little over an hour. And we had a lot to talk about in the car on the way there. A lot to encourage each other also. And we got to the store where I was meant to go pick up my packages, and I got into the store, and this obese man was sitting at the counter talking on the phone. He looked very much like the driver. Pale, pinpointed pupils. He had his monster drink of caffeine and nanobots and processed sugar in front of him, and he was shaking and screaming and yelling at this customer on the phone, and just really out of control. And he basically said, you need to wear a face mask. He put the speaker, he goes, you need to wear a face mask. And I said, okay, all right. So his colleague in the back heard me, and he started bringing out my packages. And less than 10 seconds later, the guy interrupts his phone call, and he says, you need to wear a face mask. And, the guy that was bringing my packages probably had a little Captain Obvious moment that, by the time I go in the back and get her a face mask and bring it back out here for her to put it on, I should just give her packages and she'll just be on her way. And with that, I actually said that, why don't you just give me my packages and I'll be out of the store. So he brought my packages to me, and I had agreed to pay a $7 handling fee to the business for accepting my packages for me. And I offered to pay this guy, the guy that was telling me I had to wear the mask. I offered to pay him, and he refused to take my money. So this is more illustration of the corona crown chakra being seized up, the mind being controlled, because not only are you harming yourself by wearing a face mask and insisting others harm themselves by wearing a face mask, but you're actually sabotaging your own business by refusing to take money that is owed to you from a customer. So that should illustrate for you, family, the trip to Miami Airport, and then from Miami Airport to the place where I was picking up my packages. And in part 2, I will discuss the trip back and the other interesting parts of the experience. And I hope this gives you something to think about, and I hope it's a blessing to you. And so if it is, I look forward to you staying tuned for part 2. Thank you, family.